Torrential rain and severe weather has caused widespread flooding across several parts of Bosnia-Herzegovina, burying cars, houses, and damaging roads and facilities. The country is no stranger to floods and landslides, but people say the sheer amount of rain that's fallen in the past 48 hours has been unexpected.
All of a sudden, the rain started falling, and within 10 minutes, cars were covered by water, and all of this debris came in.
In the towns of Konjic and Jablanica, south of the capital Sarajevo, heavy machinery was brought in to clear the streets. But many roads will still need to be repaired before they can be used again. Emergency services have been deployed across this municipality as well as other areas of the country.
People and machines are working hard to repair the damage. This is only one of the many affected locations.
Along the Neretva River, a popular tourist location, restaurants and businesses have also been hit hard. Despite having a robust drainage system built to weather storms, the amount of water proved too much.
The entire drainage system has been clogged up. We could not clean it fast enough. What can you do? Thankfully, no one was hurt, and thank God it's only material damage that can hopefully be repaired.
The local mayor, who was on site monitoring the situation, told Al Jazeera that by Friday afternoon, some 60 truckloads of debris had been removed. But several towns in the area remained cut off, with roads leading in and out of them unusable.
The amount of rain that's fallen in the last 36 hours equals the amount that usually falls during an entire month. Many businesses and homes have been damaged, but it's too early to assess the full extent.
On a national level, the government has stopped short of announcing a state of emergency, but says the situation is serious. People here are taking it upon themselves to fortify their homes, stacking sandbags and other objects to fend off against the floods. Whilst the most severe damage caused by the floods has been outside of Sarajevo, here in the capital, the rainfall has been consistent, raising river levels, and as a result, fears that unless the weather improves, part of the city too could be flooded. Jamal Al-Shayal, Al Jazeera, Sarajevo.
It may have been a home where children once played, or perhaps a roadside business that helped parents put food on the table. Maybe a guest house for passing tourists. Whatever it was, it is now and forever part of a massive debris field that runs the length of the Milamchi River in Sindhu-Palchak district. In valleys across Nepal, homes and businesses have been swallowed up by major floods 3 times this year. Weeks on from the latest deluge in October, the number of dead and missing is still rising, and the list of damaged and destroyed buildings is getting longer. Many Nepalese have been living in limbo for months. Naju is a mother and a grandmother. She and her husband invested everything they had in trout farms that sat at the river's edge, a trade they had hoped to pass on to the next generation. What they spent years building was gone in a day.
My son and husband were trying to save the farm, but then we had to run. As we were watching, flood waters came and swept away all the trees, and we took the kids and escaped. The next morning, we came back to have a look, and everything was gone.
Her daughter Bima ran the family cafe, which also became a casualty of unseasonably extreme weather. She says she now feels lost.
I could not have even imagined what happened. We sacrificed a lot to build that place and it didn't even last 2 years. I'm very sad about that.
Thousands of people across Nepal, just like Bima, have lost everything and are trying to rebuild their lives from scratch. Families displaced by the floods are living in these makeshift camps for now, but they're waiting for more semi-permanent housing to be built further uphill. Now that's going to be made out of corrugated metal sheets, not necessarily the best protection against the coming winter cold. But even though the river has receded, the idea right now is to get as far away from the water line as possible and onto more solid ground. But even uphill, that may not be so easy to come by. Disaster management experts are warning that areas in the Himalayan region that saw heavy rains are now at greater risk from landslides. Zain Basravi, Al Jazeera, Sindhupalchok District, Nepal.
We're keeping a close eye at conditions all along the coast. Aaron Farrar is live in St. Augustine, where the wind is causing issues this morning for boaters. But we begin right now with Vic Michelucci, who's monitoring the situation in Jacksonville Beach. Vic, are you seeing any effects yet?
Oh yeah, we're definitely seeing the effects. We're feeling the effects. So you've been checking in with us every 30 minutes, and we have seen that tide creep up and the surf get bigger. It is definitely battering the Jacksonville Beach Pier. And if you're familiar with the history over the past couple of years, you'll see that there are two piers. The one closest to us is the temporary pier so they can get all that heavy machinery out there. The further one is the repaired pier, which is actually about 8 feet higher to withstand conditions like this. Obviously, it was taken down. A good bit of it was ripped apart during Hurricanes Matthew and Irma back in 2016 and 2017. And now we are seeing the waves certainly putting it to the test here. We've been talking, Corley and Brianna, about this water coming up because we've got the king tide. That's going to be the highest here in Jacksonville Beach between about 9:30 and 10 o'clock. And it is already passing the trash cans here. It's actually right about up to here at the highest. And then you've got this foam that's coming up. It is a nor'easter, so we're getting that wind, the rain, and now the sand coming in from the north. So just to the north of us, you've got Neptune Beach, Atlantic Beach, and the Naval Station Mayport. And this right here is going to be some of the biggest gusts that we have seen so far. It is rainy, it is cold, it's not friendly. But you know what? There are some people down there that just got out of the water. They are the Duval Ocean Swimmers Club. They've been doing it for more than 40 years, and they say they're not letting this stop. Obviously, it is for experts only. Lifeguards urging people to stay off the beach and out of the water. In fact, we're going to go and talk to them in just a little bit. But you can see how this water, this wind is just coming and getting us some sand coming through. Obviously not the best way to start your Saturday morning. I'm envious of everybody at home that's sitting in there cozied up, watching TV, maybe with a warm drink and some hot breakfast. But just again, I want to show you these visuals because it's definitely out of the ordinary. It's not something we've never seen here before. We're used to nor'easters coming through, especially this time of year. But you can just see the impact right there. The birds having trouble trying to keep up. And the reconstruction project here at the pier, which is supposed to finish in the spring, is temporarily on hold. The heavy machinery wrapped up because we've got just these conditions. And I want to show you right here. Come on down here. Our photographer Kyle is going to show you. So like I was talking, the tide is coming in and we're seeing a significant change every 30 minutes as we do our live hits. So that tide coming in, it's passing the trash cans, it's going to come up here. And real quickly, I just want to walk you and show you the dune line. This is where your dunes are. The dunes are protected. The sea oats hold the sand in there. That is going to be where the erosion concerns come in, because looking at this surf the winds, the rain, it's definitely going to be an issue where we are going to see some erosion. We can already see a little bit where the sand has been washed out into the Atlantic Ocean. So certainly that's going to be something that's going to continue as these conditions deteriorate, as this king tide comes in. And I'll tell you, probably in the next 30 minutes to an hour, where I'm standing right now is going to be reached by the water. So of course, we're going to keep you posted. But for now, we are live in the not so lovely Jacksonville Beach, at least today. I'm Vic Michelucci, Channel 4, the local station.
As world leaders debate solutions to the climate crisis, no ecosystem on Earth is more crucial to our planet's survival than the South American Amazon rainforest. Right now, that forest is under siege on multiple fronts. ABC's Matt Gutman is on the scene of the devastation in Peru as part of ABC's Climate Crisis, Saving Tomorrow.
They say the Las Piedras River remains as God made it, coiling through pristine rainforest, bursting with wildlife and towering trees. We are motoring to the middle of nowhere, which is exactly where conservationist Paul Rosalie wants to take us. So why this spot?
In the whole Amazon, there's nowhere that's as important as the Western Amazon. There's more plant and animal life here than ever has existed in the history of the fossil record. So every single acre here, every inch of this place is so crucial to protect.
Paul helped found a 55,000-acre preserve in the heart of the Amazon off the Las Piedras River. It's part of an organization called Jungle Keepers, dedicated to protecting the precious rainforest.
We're trying to help people that were loggers to become protectors of the forest, people that were gold miners, saying that you can be a professional that protects this land. This is a beautiful, beautiful plant. It is absolutely stunning the way they shingle up the tree like this.
It looks painted. For generations, pristine rainforests like this have helped buffer the rest of the world's ills when it comes to climate change.
There's a reason they call them the mother of the forest.
Wow, it's like Pandora.
Nicknamed the lungs of the planet because for millions of years they absorbed carbon dioxide.
We're ending the Great Chainsaw Massacre with more than 85% of the world's forests to be protected by the end of this decade.
As world leaders commit to trying to steer the world away from climate change disaster, alarming news that the Amazon is now a net contributor of carbon dioxide and that it is perilously close to a tipping point beyond which it cannot recover.
These kinds of burns are what are causing 10 to 15% of all the CO2 in the atmosphere, right?
That's right. Almost a fifth of human carbon emissions are coming from this.
From out-of-control fires to those mile-long scars from gold mining, to sandstorms in the Amazon.
This looks like Saudi Arabia rather than Western Peru.
All of it contributing to the deforestation that is endangering the precious wildlife.
Well, the Amazon is starting to waver. The next decade is going to decide the fate of the Amazon.
Our journey in Peru on the western side of the Amazon began by car along the Trans-Amazonian Highway. It used to take more than 2 days for Paul to get to his preserve by boat, but over the past couple of years, loggers hacked out this road, which Paul likens to a shortcut through hell.
People see the green and they think, oh, it's beautiful. Now, this used to be a rainforest.
And just a few miles down that bumpy road, another pasture being born from a fire in the forest.
They're burning these on purpose to clear the land. Wow, after logging it.
Dude, that's dangerous, man.
Wow.
That'll burn you.
It's incredibly hot. There's no replanting this. There's no reforesting this.
No, you're talking about 800-year-old trees, complex ecosystems, primary forest.
And this is going on dozens of times a day, everywhere across the Amazon.
Everywhere. This is where climate change is happening. This is where the extinction crisis is happening. We're allowing this.
So why are they doing it?
These people have no other option for work.
Peru ranks 5th in the world for primary forest loss. Neighboring Brazil is number 1. Its president, Jair Bolsonaro, allowing the rate of deforestation to soar to a 12-year high. We finally arrive at the Jungle Keeper station. I'm standing about 130 feet up in the canopy of an ironwood tree. Now, this is one of the keystone species of the entire Amazon rainforest, and everything that you see in front of you right now is protected by the Jungle Keepers. But that is just a drop in the vast ocean of green that is the Amazon. The rangers spend their days monitoring the river for poachers and loggers. Some of the team are former loggers themselves.
Hay muchas actividades ilegales que subsistes.
Sí, hay una temporada donde sí se mira bastante madereros.
Along with the loggers are the illegal miners. There are so many thousands of gold mines gouged into the forest that this photo from NASA recently captured what looked like rivers of gold. But that's not gold. It's thousands of pits gouged into the river left by mining.
Everything you see around me is part of what's called La Pampa. Until just a couple of years ago, all of this was pristine Amazon rainforest. But hundreds of gold miners were given concessions here, turning this into a vast desert that stretches for mile after mile.
And then, shockingly, a sandstorm whips up, making the rainforest look more like the Sahara. That freak phenomenon increasingly common across this moonscape. The end result, the fires and mines and pastures have encroached on the habitat of 85% of the endangered species here. Some of them wind up at Magali Salinas' doorstep.
Hi, how are you?
The former flight attendant now rarely leaves what she has come to call simply the Amazon shelter.
We receive animals coming from the operative authorities, police, or people that come in and they don't want it anymore and leave it us.
She has rescued and cared for hundreds of animals, from howler monkeys to tapirs.
Poachers found her in the forest and they brought her to try to sell at a zoo?
Yeah.
How much money can people make off of selling an animal like this?
Probably he gave nothing. Probably he gave 100 soles.
$25?
Yeah, no less. Yeah, $25 probably.
For an endangered species?
Yeah.
Back in the Jungle Keeper's preserve, as the sun sets, the forest comes alive. And Paul, whose life's work has been protecting the rainforest, remains hopeful.
It's not too late. We're at the point now where we still have a chance to protect all these species, to protect the home to millions of indigenous people and this massive, beautiful biological treasure on our planet. That's why we need to focus on it so much right now.
We cannot stress enough the danger this hurricane poses.
This is going to be a big and powerful storm.
Our nation has been tested by the destructive force of Mother Nature.
Storms are changing for sure, and the footprint, that is the fingerprints of humans, are on that change. We know that the CO2 increasing in the atmosphere isn't from volcanoes. It's not natural. We can see the signature of fossil fuels in that carbon dioxide.
Right around 1999, Hurricane Floyd, or Tropical Storm Floyd, it wasn't a hurricane, Tropical Storm Floyd came in, and that's where all these real crazy storms had started with like massive, really massive flooding. I was a volunteer firefighter in town for 25 years. The town formed a boat rescue team because there was no water rescues back in '99.
The way we get a cloud is to evaporate water somewhere. That evaporating water then rises up into the atmosphere, and it goes up to some level, and then the temperature decreases, then it condenses into a cloud. What's happening now is the water vapor is more abundant because it's warmer, but particularly as we get more convection in the atmosphere, bringing it up to a higher altitude, these storms just get bigger and bigger. So what's changed is really wind speed and the amount of water in the atmosphere. And those things have created these really large and destructive storms. We've gotten a lot more intense storms. The frequency is maybe debatable, but the frequency of the really intense storms has gone up a lot. And the damage associated with them, the costs of that, have also gone up a lot.
We view this as a humanitarian crisis because these storms are devastating, they're more chronic, they're going to require more from us as an organization. but I think we're preparing that we're going to have to do more of it than we might have done historically, just because of the frequency and intensity of some of these disasters.
So now we're seeing storms that used to be, or just a heavy rain that was once in a 100-year event is now maybe once in a 10-year. And in some cases, we're seeing these once in 100 years back to back in the same season. And that's new. We didn't used to do that.
I remember as a kid going down there, having friends down there, and going to birthday parties, and basically everybody in Lost Valley had a fixed up basement. I mean, you just better have your furnace and hot water heater down there and like nothing else, because it's going to get ruined. It's just inevitable that it's going to get ruined.
What we're seeing now is sort of the proof in the pudding, as they say. The CO2 is increasing, the atmosphere is warming, and we're seeing the consequences.
Youth on the march. Demonstrators and pressure groups say they have been underwhelmed by the commitments made so far in Glasgow. They see COP26 as a cop-out. What the Swedish activist Greta Thunberg, present at the protest, calls blah, blah, blah.
I don't think that world leaders discussing there is of any use because they are only saying what they have been saying for decades, which is only false promises, targets that are so-called ambitious but are actually full of loopholes. So for them, it's not, because it's just full of greenwashing.
Greta Thunberg has galvanized young people around the world to take action in Fridays for future school strikes. Some Scottish children did just that, singing and dancing in Glasgow city centre. Young people were out in force across the city.
In the future, we're going to be adults, and I don't want to pass this on to the next generation.
The demos are part of a series of protests being staged worldwide to coincide with the UN climate negotiations in Glasgow. The COP26 meeting ends next Friday, with much more action needed by national governments to address the climate emergency.
Organisers feared the worst, so the announcements coming out of Glasgow are at least reassuring. After the first week of discussions, the COP26 participants reached a consensus on a number of measures to rein in greenhouse gas emissions. But on Saturday, environmental activists across the world took to the streets fed up with distant targets and lack of concrete action. For them, it's time to hold the world's leaders to account, starting with the $100 billion a year in climate financing to help poorer nations transition to greener energy, which was supposed to materialize last year.
The first thing is to make sure that the regular assessment of the richer countries' emission reduction targets should be happening on an annual basis. We can't wait for 5 years. When the finance is being discussed, we cannot have another situation where a target that was agreed 12 years ago, the $100 billion a year, still hasn't been met. So we need to ratchet up the pressure and make sure the richer countries deliver.
One of the key commitments so far is limiting the use of coal. More than 20 new countries added their pledge to end the use of the most polluting of all fossil fuels by 2030. But conspicuously absent from the signatories, two of the biggest users of coal, China and the US. However, Washington did join other countries in agreeing to end the financing of fossil fuel projects abroad. It's another significant announcement, with international financing worth 12 to 15 billion euros per year. Among the other announcements, a commitment to end deforestation by 2030 and reducing methane emissions by 30%. Holding all partners to their pledges will be difficult, especially for developing countries. Indonesia, home to the world's third largest rainforest, has already reneged on its commitment to stop deforestation, but there have been some signs of progress, with the European Union, the United Kingdom and United States among signatories of an $8.5 billion partnership to wean South Africa off coal. As for carbon emissions, the outlook remains bleak. After a slight dip in 2020 thanks to the coronavirus pandemic, greenhouse gas emissions have resumed their upward trajectory and are now close to pre-COVID levels. The United Nations says the world is heading for catastrophic global warming of 2.7 degrees Celsius by 2030, far beyond the 2-degree limit agreed at COP26 in Paris.
It's taken years to get off the ground, but the Great Green Wall finally seems to be making progress. The goal is to plant an 8,000-kilometre-long mosaic of trees, grasslands, vegetation and plants across the entire width of Africa to fight desertification in the Sahel region and provide more food security. Hosting a meeting with Emmanuel Macron on the sidelines of COP, Prince Charles reiterated the project's aims.
The Great Green Wall Initiative offers a precious opportunity to restore land, forests and biodiversity, while also addressing the social, economic and environmental impacts of land degradation.
The French president also called it a question of security.
These are very concrete projects that provide economic opportunities and jobs that allow us to counteract the terrible situation that create either sudden migrations, as is the case in the Lake Chad region, or situations of terrorism, as is the case in the Sahel.
Emmanuel Macron says that nearly half of the $19 billion promised at the start of the year is now on its way. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos has pledged a further $1 billion from his foundation, and the European Union is also promising help.
We will contribute to different pillars of the Great Green Wall and thus supporting local communities while restoring the environment and reversing biodiversity loss.
The Great Green Wall could eventually restore 100 million hectares of land, absorb 250 million metric tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and create 10 million jobs. But so far, only 18% of the original targets have been met.
It's called the Global Methane Pledge. Spearheaded by the US and the EU, dozens of nations have joined the initiative to reduce global methane emissions by 30% by the end of the decade. Leaders hope it will have a powerful short-term impact on curbing global warming.
Cutting back on methane emissions is one of the most effective things we can do to reduce near-term global warming and keep 1.5 degrees Celsius. It is the lowest hanging fruit.
Major sources of methane emissions include the oil and gas industry, landfills, agriculture, and livestock. According to the pledge, methane accounts for 17% of emissions from human activities, making it the second most important greenhouse gas in terms of concentration and impact on the climate. Although it breaks down in the atmosphere more quickly than carbon dioxide, it warms the atmosphere faster in the short term.
It's 20 to 80 times more destructive than CO2. It is fully responsible for 0.5 degrees of the warming of the 1.1 we're at today. And with this initiative, you're making it possible for us, if we achieve our goal, to be able to lower the warming by 0.2 degrees.
Clamping down on methane emissions, particularly from oil and gas production, is considered one of the easier ways of curbing climate change, as technology for detecting and repairing leaks already exists. But the UN warns that slashing methane without reducing carbon dioxide emissions will not